We'd like to reconvene the Common Council meeting Thursday, January 18th. And we would like to welcome all our guests to our first meeting. We were snowed out on our first official meeting. And now we'd like to start the public comment period. Before we start the public comment period, I'd like to let all speakers know that you have 5 minutes to speak on any subject or any topic you would like to speak on. We'd also like to ask, in the interest of time, if someone else speaks on the same issue that you speak on, if you decide not to speak, just let us know. But also, during public comment period, no council member can address you. We ask that you not address questions of council members. Council members cannot answer you during this public comment period time, but some council members may choose later on in the miscellaneous part of the meeting to address questions or comments that you may say at public comment period. I just want to reiterate that at the time of public comment, council members cannot address or speak to you about your public comments at that time. So with that being said, will the clerk call the roll? First speaker. Thank you.
Judd Crasher.
Try it now. Works.
Mr. President, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to the council members. My name is Judd Crasher. I reside at 635 State Street in Albany, New York. First, I want to wish everyone, as I said, a Happy New Year, and also thank the new council members. Despite a contentious last year, I admire each of you who have stepped up to the plate to address the many challenges that face the city. I'll get right into it, but before that, I just want to express my aghast that evidently there were members of the public, many that were asked to leave the council chamber for the mayor's State of the City address because the seats were reserved. That's absolutely outrageous, and again goes to the continuance of my past concerns with this administration not being accountable to the public, and the peasants having to go to a viewing room to watch the mayor on TV downstairs. That's abhorrent. It's still early, I understand that in this term, but I want to talk about the dire need for an independent council. Let me talk about the Palace Theater real quick. I know it's gone. The deal is done, thanks to the previous council. But I do want to bring up the fact that the ordinance that authorized the sale made it very clear that the council had a responsibility, and it said the council was to review the section of the agreement dealing with community benefits agreements. Well, the prior council was sent the selling documents, which included the word salad, nonsense, meaningless CBA agreement less than a week after this deadline was expedited to December 31st. And I wanted to make sure that this council had an opportunity to review the CBA and actually have a meaningful CBA for wards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. But that didn't happen. And it speaks to a problem. The coup that has just occurred in the county, thanks to some of you fake progressives, is successful. Congratulations. But keep in mind that there are 8 of you in this chamber that can have your own coup. The current president pro tem said that no, there wasn't going to be a vote. That the fact that that Corporation Council sent out the selling documents 7 days before was sufficient for council members to review a major policy decision. Similar to how you're being viewed tonight when you're being given a resolution at the last minute with no time to review it. This is very typical of the President Pro Tem to carry the water of the administration, whichever administration it may be. It takes 8 votes to get rid of your President Pro Tem. Never forget that. Perhaps it's Ms. O'Pliers, perhaps it's Ms. Doesschate that takes the lead to make sure we have an independent body. Finally, I just want to tell the council members who have the audacity to be independent during this term, do not be intimidated when you hear words from Mr. Conti's mouth or from Mayor Sheehan's mouth or from any other apologists for this administration that you're being political or an obstructionist or a Republican. As a matter of fact, their allies in the county just sided with the Republicans, Trump Republicans, just now, and about 2 weeks ago. Fight. You are not here to answer to Mr. Conti. You are not here to answer to the mayor. You're obviously here to answer to your constituents. I know I'll be watching my council member very closely, but I implore you, please, please, be an independent member of this body. Do not carry the water for this administration. That doesn't mean you have to disagree all the time, but it does mean that you have to stand up and fight when it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the clerk call the next speaker, please?
Mark Gronick.
Mr. President, common council members, my name is Mark Gronick. I live at 300 Hackett Boulevard in Albany. I come before you today to tell you how angry, hurt. Okay. Mr. President, common council members, my name is Mark Gronick. I live at 300 Hackett Boulevard in Albany. I come before you today to tell you how angry, hurt, frustrated, and appalled I am that I have not been reappointed to the PEG Access Oversight Board. First, I would like to congratulate the new members of the council and the new council president on a well-deserved victory in November. I'm sure you will be of valuable service to the government of the city of Albany. I wish you all the best of success in your new roles. Like all of you, I wanted to give back to the city I have been a part of for almost 40 years. When I was appointed to the PEG board on December 21st, 2015, 2 years ago, all I wanted to do was contribute to the success and progress of community media, also known as public access. In 2 years, I have racked up many accomplishments working with my fellow board members and going on a community outreach tour to all the neighborhood associations at the request of the chairman. Some of the impact I had working with my fellow board members includes drafting bylaws and a brochure and assisting in completing the report to the Common Council. I also saw the need for new equipment to be installed in the Common Council chamber, city courtroom, rotunda, and mayor's conference room in City Hall, as well as upgrading the equipment at the Channel Albany studio. Along with Keith Irish, a selfless volunteer, we submitted to the board in 2016 4 estimates from reputable industry firms and within our available budget for the board to consider. Instead of communicating with me how the board wanted to move forward with these proposals, they were shelved. Some of the other accomplishments included creating continuity slides so viewers know when programs are shown on the channel. In October 2016, the Albany Common Council passed a resolution commemorating Community Media Day at my urging. I organized a Community Media Advocacy Day last year at the Capitol to financially help PEG access systems in New York State. I secured an anchor desk from a local TV station so the programs taped at Channel Albany could have a more professional look. I was also involved in the construction of the Channel Albany website. Keith and I taped many government meetings to be shown on Channel Albany, giving our station a stronger presence throughout the city. Government meetings covered on a regular basis include the Albany Common Council, Albany Planning Board, Albany Board of Zoning Appeals, Albany Water Board, Albany Housing Authority, Albany City School District Board, special events in the City Hall Rotunda, and the State of the City address by Mayor Sheehan, and other meetings I can't recall at the moment. I also joined the Alliance for Community Media of New York to take advantage of trade shows that would increase my knowledge of the equipment and the direction the industry was moving in, so we did not purchase outdated equipment. Networking with other community media outlets around the state is very valuable for the progress of Channel Albany. Since February 2016, I attended 6 conferences in New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, all without reimbursement for expenses, on my own dime, and most of them with our dedicated volunteer, Keith Irish. Perhaps my most important accomplishment was uncovering how the former chairman of this board had perpetrated a fraud on the city by saying he lived in the city of Albany when he really lived in Slingerlands and should not have been appointed here in the first place. I feel that because I spoke up and brought this incident to the fore, my reappointment is retribution for taking such a bold action. Now I have a better sense of how women felt not wanting to come forward to claim sexual harassment due to retribution It does happen. Please keep in mind, after all this, I did nothing illegal, improper, or even remotely approaching impropriety. There was no credible reason for me not to be reappointed. The reappointment process was brought on by the city attorney declaring that the current board members needed to sign
one more minute.
an oath of office. Never before in 7 years has a member of the PEG board been required to sign such an oath. In addition, when I was appointed, an oath of office was never offered for me to sign. A scenario could have been offered that moving forward, all board members must sign their oath, but that option was not available or considered. This entire oath of office requirement was supposed to be pro forma, just to get the board members back on track with the system. It was not meant to reconsider the worthiness of each board member, but the now defunct ad hoc committee decided to make this issue a referendum on who is a better team player, more popular, or something like that. Nowhere was it written that I was involved in a popularity contest. In 2 years, I have proven that I can get along with my fellow board members on a professional level and also take the initiative to improve Channel Albany. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. Well, you can reverse that. I would like for this common council to reinstate my tenure
Mr.
on
Groenich,
the
your time
Access
is up,
Oversight
please.
Board. I may not
Thank
get
you.
unanimous
Your
approval,
time is up,
but
sir.
I know of
Can you
at least
please-
8 council members
Please respect
who
the,
will support me.
please
I hope-
respect other
Excuse
members.
me, this was 4 minutes and 56 seconds.
No, I have 5 minutes, sir.
And your clock is not right because I timed it. It was 4 minutes, 56 seconds. That's why I'm playing the audio.
Sir, it took you
Because it's
about,
under 5 minutes.
it took you about 30 seconds to get it started, sir. Please respect
That-
the other citizens
That
who are coming
shouldn't
behind.
be part of my time.
Please respect the other citizens
Well,
who are coming
I
to
do.
speak in behind you, okay? Thank
Well,
you.
that's why I'm glad I sent all this out to everyone
Thank you.
individually.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Clerk, call the next speaker, please.
R.A. DePrima. Ms. Taisha Cough.
Good evening. My name is Taisha Cough Ajayi. I have a background in nursing, real estate, aesthetics. I'm the treasurer of the American Muslim Society here in the capital region of Albany. I'm also a humanitarian as well as a community activist. I'm here to speak about PEG. And I understand there will be some changes coming from PEG. We had some issues last year with PEG, and I'm just looking forward for the new changes that's supposed to be taking place with PEG. Again, I think it's very important that the community at large be able to have a medium to where they could express and share ideas and tell us what's going on in the community. I see a lot of new faces here tonight, and I welcome you all. I thank God that He has placed you here, and welcome, and Happy New Year as well. And that's all I have to say. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you. Clerk, call the next speaker.
Dennis Carriers.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Carius, and what we just heard from Mark Greenwich, I want to second the motion. He was the vice chair of the PEG Oversight Board, and it's really sad when somebody loses their job. It's sort of like when Keith used to be up there at the camera, no charge. Keith used to be videotaping this. So now, if I'm talking, it should be videotaping me, or if somebody else is talking, Keith would just turn the camera. But for some reason, he was told, don't do this anymore. He lost that job. And to me, it's almost like people are losing jobs because they were doing too good of a job. And things are going in a bad direction. And I really think that Mark was doing the best job to get PEG, the public access, to go in a good direction. So I'm asking, it's been about 8 months now that the studio's been closed at the main branch of the Albany Public Library. And they call it public because it's really for the public, the library. If they said to us, and many of us here, look, we're either going to get rid of the studio or get rid of the books, we'd say, keep the studio, okay? We want the studio. That's more important to us. So we would like to just go in a good direction and just reopen the studio and go the way it was. We have channels 16, 17, and 18 out there for the public. Well, I know education and government. So if right now, if this meeting is so important, there are not enough seats here for people to come in, but they don't have to. If this is videotaped for channel, for the government channel, you could be home watching this meeting right now. You don't have to be sitting in this room. So we really want those 3 channels to stay. If you asked me 16, 17, and 18, or channel 6, 10, and 13, I'd say get rid of 6, 10, and 13. Let's keep 16, 17, and 18 so we, the public, can speak. So that's what I'd like. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Vincent Raguso.
Mr. President, Common Council, I want to congratulate everyone. Mr. President, you hold a very important seat up there. You are the liaison from this council to the mayor's office. And you committee people, or you council people, you are the liaison from us. Each one of you sit here because you got a majority of the vote, of which your district represents, which is roughly 7,000 votes, 7,000. I want to say, Mr. President, I'm happy that you're going by the 5-minute mark, but I do want to tell you that if we go by the 5-minute mark, then we have to look at time in essence. This council meeting should start at 7 o'clock. Your laws, not my laws. So if we're going to stay by the 5-minute mark, I think we should start at the 7 o'clock mark too, which this council says the meeting starts at 7, and if it does not start at 7, this is an illegal meeting. So with that being said, I'm here to talk about this resolution, 527 bond resolution, where the city is going to pass tonight, I believe, $1.7 million. And if you read it, and I know all of you did read it, this fine print here, not one spot does it say the city of Albany. It says the county, the county, the county. You talk about taking the 4th and 5th floor of Albany County Nursing Home and putting 911 people up there. Do we know that can be done? New York State, when the county wanted to do something with the 4th and 5th floor of the nursing home, it couldn't be done. In fact, to my knowledge, just recently, it was talked about that this probably would not happen because the state would not allow this to happen. So my question is how would we, the city of Albany, go for a $1.7 million bond? I think the most important part down in the bond, it says the county then reasonably expects to reimburse such expenditures with the process of the bond. I just can't fantasize how this council here can pass this bond tonight. And I would have to say, out of 15 members I have here, if you do it honestly and show a sign of hands, how many people read this? Not very many. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Alanna Klein.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I'd like to welcome back everyone who was reelected and to welcome you new members who are new to your seats. Before I begin, Mr. President, since the meeting was canceled due to inclement weather on January 4th, I took the liberty of printing out what would have been my comments that night. With your permission, I'd like to present that to the city clerk so he can distribute it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I was planning to speak tonight on how this country has become even more racially divided over the past year and a half with the current political climate, the actions of those in D.C., and how those relate to Martin Luther King Day. However, as the saying goes, sometimes the story writes itself. To those who are reelected, you know that I have spoken in the past with purposefulness, composure, and professionalism. To those of you who are new to your seats, I'm sorry if my forthcoming words aren't quote-unquote professional, but I would not be doing justice without saying one specific word. Mr. President, if you feel I'm out of order, then I will remove myself from the seat, but ask that I still be able to submit my comments in writing. Mr. Trump's description of Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries as, quote, shitholes is uncalled for, elitist, and most importantly, outright racist. His targeting of predominantly black and brown countries and people was and is an embarrassment to this country and the office that he holds. Additionally, the congressional leadership continues to not only refuse to condemn his behavior, but tacitly endorses it. Immigrants from all nations, walks of life, religions, and ethnicities helped build this country, and that 240 plus years of progress is being torn apart with each passing day. Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. These words used to mean something. Earlier, I mentioned Martin Luther King Day, and my intent was to ask if you thought that such a day would be passed in honor of the man should that vote happen today. I believe that Mr. Trump, Mr. Ryan, and a host of others have answered that for us. When I look out into the world, I see religious persecution. I see ethnic cleansing. I see arrest without cause. I see execution without trial. I see a ruling elite. I see a police state. I see war crimes. I see people dying in the streets. I see war-torn families. I see homelessness. I see poverty. If that is the definition we're using, then make no mistake. The United States of America is a shithole country. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "I knew I could never again raise my voice against the violence of oppressed in the ghettos without first having spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in this world today, my own government." Thank you for your time. Black Lives Matter. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. The clerk, call the next speaker, please.
McQuinn.
I want to say thank you for the kind words and gestures to the previous speaker. All African people from the diaspora can appreciate that. Someone is sticking from a member from a dominant society recognize some of the missteps or behaviors of our 45th president. In any case, my name is One Jennings. I am a member of the local organizing committee, Justice or Else. I last spoke to you in June, serving an invitation for the Common Council members to join us at the annual Black Wall Street Expo. I'm here in a different capacity this time. I officially proposed the naming of the small bench area, the corner of Lark and Clinton Ave, to be called Malcolm X Park. The area is newly renovated, being around 4 years old, but in its infancy, it doesn't have a formal denomination. Since its creation, it has been used quite regularly by longtime community member Anthony Gooding for neighborhood gatherings, showcasing our youth's talents in mind and body, most specifically playing chess, cookouts, fundraisers, and hopefully, and eventually, a mural of the late freedom fighter. It actually was Mr. Gooding's idea to name the park. Malcolm X is the perfect moniker for that particular area. Malcolm stood for truth, justice, and equality. Malcolm believed in the heart of the community and grassroots participation in black liberation and freedom movements, and that residents should have full say and control of what goes on in their community. He is a symbol of which our young people can gather around and a teaching apparatus to properly instruct our youths about self-reliance and accountability. His legacy has all been stolen from our people and rewritten. Gone is his 12 years in the Nation of Islam that brought him up, and its founder and teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The strict Muslim life he lived, which gave him the spiritual strength to completely eliminate all his prior vices. Malcolm gave his life for black people to stand up for themselves and fight the injustices that plague this country still. This park can be a symbol to reconnect the city's African diaspora with the local government. I think it's an excellent way to start the new year. I have an online and handwritten signatures, the sum of 300. I hope a resolution can be found by the time it warms. Thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Would you like to hand those resolutions?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Clerk, call next speaker, please.
Nancy Benedict.
My name is Nancy Benedict. I live at 31 Forest Road in Delmar, and I am the chairman of Citizens for Public Transportation. I was originally planning to speak tonight about the campaign which Citizens for Public Transportation kicked off in November to get cleaner, safer, more accessible, and more usable bus stops. But when I heard that Mark Gronich had not been reappointed to his position on the PEG Oversight Board, and that you are looking for somebody to replace him, I knew that I had to use the public comment period at this meeting to speak in defense of Mark. I will speak about the bus stops during the public comment period at a future meeting. During the short time Mark Gronich was on the PEG Oversight Board, he proved to be the board member who was the most interested, the most knowledgeable, and the member who came up with the best and most original ideas. He also was the board member who was most willing to expend his own resources of time and money to improve Channel Albany. During the time Mark was on the board, I have attended most of the committee meetings, and I always listened carefully to what Mark had to say, since I always had the greatest respect for Mark and his ideas and opinions. Until the studio closed at the end of last May, Mark was doing a TV show called Jewish World that was appearing on Channel Albany. There was one other member of the PEG Oversight Board who was doing a TV show in the Channel Albany studio, and one other person who was making a show in the Colony Access TV studio that was shown on Channel Albany. But most of the members of the PEG Oversight Board do not ever use the TV studio or the equipment there, and Mark did. At a PEG Oversight meeting last summer, the PEG Oversight Board members came to the meeting only to hear Mario Chiarello announce at the beginning of the meeting that they could not conduct any business that night because the committee members who had been appointed by the Common Council had not been properly sworn in. The meeting was adjourned, and all of the committee members, or all of the board members except Mark, left. Mark then invited all of the public members who were sitting around the side of the room to come up and sit at the table where the board members sit. Most of the public who were there came up to the table, and we had a meeting. That was the beginning of Friends of PEG, a group which is committed to giving support to PEG. And incidentally, Friends of PEG is having a meeting on Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. at the main branch of the Albany Public Library on Washington Avenue. And at and to that meeting, everyone in this room is welcome to attend. Now, Mark has...
Ma'am, you have 1 minute left.
Mark has given his time and money to attend a bunch of conferences. Those conferences include, in February 16, the Jersey Access Group Conference, Morristown, New Jersey, also known as Eastern Regional Communication and Technology Conference, also attended the same conference in 2017. August 2016, he attended the National Alliance for Community Media in Boston. In September 2016, he attended Media Resources Conference in Danvers, Massachusetts. In October 2016, he was instrumental in getting the Albany Common Council to pass a resolution commemorating Community Media Day in the city of Albany. In July of 2017, he attended the National Alliance for Community Media in Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Ma'am,
which
your
was
time's
very
up, ma'am.
expensive to him. Thank you.
Thank you. At this moment, we've exceeded our 30-minute time limit. Mr. Conti? Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor? Motion passes to extend. Can the speaker call the next? Clerk call the next speaker. Sure.
Mr. Jason Mudd.
Hello, my name is Jason Mudford. I'm from Ward 13. First of all, Happy New Year. Welcome, council members. Welcome back, council members. I did want to speak on a couple of different things that I'm going to tie together. I know we started this meeting with Judd Crasher's comments about how the chambers were closed and the citizens had to kind of be downstairs, almost like peasants. But there was a counterpoint that I caught in Mayor Sheehan's State of the City address where she said something very profound. She said at one point that we must listen in order to be able to fix the problems in Albany. We must listen in order to be able. So I was glad that even if it wasn't open, people could listen, as I had online. I need to invite the council, I need to invite all city agencies to do that. We must listen in order to be able to fix the problems in Albany. And while there's so many great initiatives that came out of that State of the City address, I encountered an issue that I've spoken on before. It deals with the snow plows that actually travel through the city with recklessness and throw enough snow back onto my already cleared sidewalk. Now, this council, or the previous incarnation, had recently passed a resolution that said, instead of sending a DGS worker out to inspect a property and start a 24-hour time clock there, anytime there was a complaint, if they saw that it was already after 24 hours after the end of the snowfall, they could clean that sidewalk, charge $75 for it, and fine $100 to $300 to the person depending on how many infractions they've had. So I was a little bit confused, and I need the council perhaps to clarify what it means by the end of the falling of the snow, because for most people that was 4:30 today, Thursday. But the plows continued to come down Washington Avenue. I said Ward 13. I live at 912 Washington Avenue. And if you're headed from up top downtown, I actually have the first two parking spaces on Washington Avenue on that side. The lanes shift to the left in front of my property, but the plows don't nearly shift left as soon as they ought to. They come down at a high speed, and I get my cleared sidewalk inundated with new snow from the city streets. In that regard, the city's a bad neighbor. But the question is, and this is the clarification I seek, does it mean living at that address, 912 Washington, and the plows come by, and the snow gets plowed on at 1 in the morning, does that mean I have until 1 a.m. this morning, Friday, upcoming, to clear that path? See, that's my concern, is there's some dubiousness, some lack of clarity there in that law that was passed. And so I'm asking that we must listen in order to be able to fix this problem. There's two very simple solutions, and I shared this at 518-434-CITY with whoever answered the phone call. They were very receptive, very polite. I love that. But here are my two suggestions, and I need you all to listen and hear it too. One, we need to slow down the plows wherever in the city it's happening that they are taking the snow from the roads and throwing it back out onto the sidewalks that tax-paying homeowning citizens like myself have to deal with. I cleared my sidewalk, I cleared my driveway, I even cleared off part of my lawn so I had room to turn my car around. And I got back out there this morning and I saw and photographed that snow had been thrown from the city streets onto my property, and I know for certain I am legally not allowed to throw it back. We need to do better than this, and the city, we must listen in order to be able. The second thing is, please, I hope this council will take up this issue and address that clarity in a more formal capacity, whether that's talking with the mayor, talking with Department of General Services, modifying the law, whatever the case may be. But I know when I posted this issue out on Facebook, I was not alone in having snow thrown back on my property and this being a recurring issue year after year after year. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Zachary Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Albany Common Council for the opportunity to speak here tonight. My name is Zachary Simpson. I currently reside at 175 Homestead Avenue in the city of Albany. I come before you tonight to address the current state of Channel Albany and the PEG Access Oversight Board. I am co-chair of the group Friends of PEG. We're united and concerned citizens committed to the future of community media in Albany and surrounding areas. As a quick review for those who are here tonight who may not know the current issues at hand, the studio for Channel Albany has been closed since May of last year. Show producers for Channel Albany have not been able to utilize the studio to record new programming since its closure. The position for the public access coordinator for the studio has been vacant since May of last year. New equipment is needed in the studio and in several city hall locations. Finally, last week was the first official Oversight Board meeting since July of last year. So it appears there were 6 solid months of little to no action by the Oversight Board. For the last several months, I've had a front row seat to these issues, and I do not appreciate at all what I am seeing. I am forever an optimist, but to witness this level of dysfunction and deterioration gives me great pause when I think about the future of community media. But I am hopeful. I am hopeful that the problems can be resolved and things can begin moving in a positive direction with the Oversight Board in Channel Albany. In case you were not aware, our group, Friends of PEG, has launched a petition that points out the many issues I mentioned tonight. If there is anyone here that would like to sign the petition, please see me at the end of tonight's meeting. In closing, I would just like to leave everyone with a reminder. As of today, the Channel Albany studio has been closed for 232 days. 232 days. That is 8 months. That is 2/3 of a year, folks. This is entirely unacceptable. It's an embarrassment for the city of Albany. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Brian Fromm.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Brian Franz, and I am the Vice President of the Albany Police Officers Union Local 2841 of Council 82, the bargaining representative of the City of Albany 911 Emergency Dispatchers. In addition to being a police officer, I am also an Albany resident in the 8th Ward. It has been long rumored and recently revealed to be true that the city and the county are looking to merge or consolidate the City of Albany 911 emergency dispatchers with the county's 911 emergency dispatchers. We respectfully ask that you keep all the dispatchers who keep our citizens and our police officers, firefighters, and EMTs safe at the forefront of every discussion and at every step of this process. It is a complicated process to transfer personnel from one municipal employer to another upon the transfer of functions, both from a civil service law perspective and from a public safety perspective. If it is going to be done, it has to be done right for everyone's sake. We respectfully urge you to insist that these dispatchers and their representatives be given a seat at the table from day one in this process, out of fundamental fairness to them and out of concern for the health and safety of Albany citizens and its public safety personnel. With regard to health and safety, the first person anyone talks to about their emergency is a dispatcher. Nobody knows the streets of Albany better. Nobody is better trained in making sure that the correct response to Albany emergencies is made. Are the citizens and public safety officers of Albany going to continue to be safe during and after transition? Are you absolutely sure about that? Because you need to be. And with regard to fundamental fairness, how would any of us feel? How would any of us like to be treated if our jobs were the centerpiece of a discussion about economics, job consolidation, job elimination, or whatever? What stress and worry not only to the employees face, but also to their families that are going through this process during these discussions. Therefore, our dispatchers are very worried, concerned, and upset and what their futures hold. They're concerned about their benefits and the promises that were made to them when they began their career. We respectfully ask that you keep all of that in mind as this process plays out. Thank you again for being heard.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Lastly, Mr. Andrew Willis.
Good evening, Council President and Council members. It's an honor to be here with you tonight to welcome the new members in and to congratulate the existing members. Well, I apologize first for my retirement because we were at a different event, but I wanted to come by and greet you because this is 2018 and we're looking for a better year than we had last year. I've been listening to some of the issues that the community is going through, speakers before me, and I deem their arguments valid, but one thing set us aside from them. Everyone's talking about how to keep jobs and being appreciated for jobs. But we're talking the same cry, no jobs. Our communities are dying. There are 15 ward leaders, 15 common council members. Our communities do not have access to jobs. And even to tighten the screws a little bit tighter, last year the council passed a resolution that in order to work on any of those city jobs, you have to have an apprenticeship program. Now, everyone knows, you know what I want to say. I'll blurb that. Everyone knows that we don't have apprenticeship programs or union involvement that would consider the flow of money with these big companies to come into our community. So I am the president of ECWA Local 102. We have an approved apprenticeship program. We want to talk to you about how to help our community come back to life. You see, we depend on you. We don't depend on the large companies because they do what they do. They do business day after day. But we voted for you, and we depend on you. So we urge you not to fall for the same pitfalls that we as a community have been falling for, year after year after year. The school board, we've been struggling trying to get some access to those jobs. It's been 30 years. And now there's another project coming up for $20 million to change an existing school into a middle school. Do we really need that? It's not my call or my choice to say. But I do want to say that even though there are separate institutions from you, the council, you still represent us, the community members. So I am imploring you to come on board and get in the discussion. If you say ECWA Local 102 is missing a key component, then what we should do is say, this is how we're going to plug that hole up. The mayor, I watched for 2 days, engage in the conversation from the governor, trying to get the extra $12 million. Every year we got a deficit. Can't we see it's because we have a huge portion of our community that's not working? That's the economic drain. We can plug that up. We can plug that up. We are ready to work. It's just that the big companies want to bring in their boys. They're comfortable with them. That's fine, but know what? These are our projects. The taxes are coming from our pockets. The bonds are being written on our backs. The only thing that we're asking is for an opportunity
1 minute.
to work on some of the projects in our community. We're not asking for 100%. We're not asking for 50%. We're asking for inclusion. Now, that doesn't seem like a hard sell. We want you to support us and get involved and represent us as the community in this struggle with the school board, because we know it's Turner, a $10 billion corporation, 2,960 jobs operating just last year alone. We need help. We need help. And regardless of what anyone says, the cry since 1915 has been jobs. The cries from 1950 have been jobs. The cry from 1960 has been jobs. The cries from 2017 last year was jobs. And this is 2018.
Time is up, sir.
This is 2018, and the cry is still the same.
Thank you, sir.
Jobs.
Thank you. Since we have no other speakers signed up to speak, at this time we will deem the public comment period closed. Moving on, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Mr. Conti. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes adopted. Moving right along on the agenda, we're going to move to the introduction of local law. Ms. Doesschate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Local Law A, 2018 for introduction.
Can the clerk please read the local law?
Local law amending Article 15 of Chapter 333 of the Code of the City of Albany.
Mr. Conti? Second. Anyone second that motion? All those in favor? Is that it? Ms. Douschae.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Local Law B for 2018.
The clerk please read the local law, please.
In local law amending Section 34 of Article 3 of Chapter 333 of the Albany City Code, allowing for the deduction of non-reimbursed medical costs from senior citizen incomes for the purpose of qualifying for the senior citizens tax exemption.
Mr. Conti? Thank you. Moving on, we don't have any consideration of ordinance at this time, so we'll be moving to... Yes? Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Conti. We have no consideration. Mr. Dousschate?
Just for the record, as recently appointed chair of the Finance Committee, I will be setting up a meeting before the end of this month for us to take up local law A and B for consideration. And thank you very much for the members who have agreed to serve on this committee. We have a lot of work to do. There will be a number of other meetings, and I'll brief you on that when we have our first meeting.
Thank you. We have no ordinances to introduce today, so we'll be moving to the introduction of resolutions. Ms. Dousschate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 1.12.18R for introduction and passage.
Clerk, please read the resolution.
Resolution of the Common Council consenting to the transfer of funds which will affect salary totals in the Water Department for the 2018 budget.
Any discussion on the resolution? Hearing no discussion. Yes, call the roll, please. Did you want a voice vote or a roll call vote on that? Okay. All those in favor? Those opposed? No abstentions. Resolution passes. Ms. Dousschate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice resolution 2.12.18R for introduction and passage by voice vote.
Could the clerk please read the resolution, please?
Resolution of the Common Council consenting to the adjustments in salaries pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Albany and Albany Blue Collar Workers Union, Local 1961, AFS-CME Council C6, AFL-CIO for the 2018 budget.
Any discussions on the resolution? Hearing no discussions, all those in favor? Those opposed? Resolution passes. Mr. Conti. Thank you. Mr. Shea. Can the clerk please read the... All those in favor? Yes. Can the clerk please read the resolution? Oh, yes, introduce, sorry. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Sure. Resolution of the City of Albany Common Council authorizing the Albany Police Department to apply for the New York State Department of State Municipal Restructuring Fund grant.
Any discussion on the resolution? Thank you. Mr. Hoey?
Thank you. I just have a couple of concerns, and my main concern is that we were only alerted to this resolution a couple of days ago. And moving forward, it would be nice to know ahead of time that we can do some research to make an informed decision on these types of votes. So I'm hoping, this has been going on for a while, and I just don't understand why it just popped up 2 days ago, and I didn't have enough time to investigate. Again, I'm concerned. I have a couple of neighbors that live 2 blocks away from me that are dispatchers. They called me today. They're very concerned. And during the caucus meeting, we saw people were pretty upset. And again, I think if we get the information out, if we have a good discussion, like Richard said, that we stay on top of it, and if we can save the city money, I think it's a good idea. But want to make sure that nobody gets hurt, that the workers there, remain whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Ballard.
Thank you. I just want to concur with Councilman Hall. We want to make sure that the city knows that we want to make sure that none of these employees lose in this process. And what I mean by that, it's the seniority question is a serious question, because if you're taken off the ladder, so you gain X amount of benefits by the amount of time that you're there, if they're being brought back in as a new employee, then those benefits that they would have gained with the amount of time that they have already established will be lost. So we want to make sure that when we pass this, that we make it very clear to the police department and those city officials that the union should have a seat at the table to make sure that their issues and their concerns, not just for their employees that they represent, but also they may have ideas of how they can make this a much smoother process for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any further discussion? Mr. Conti? Thank you. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Mr. Alanna? Ms. Polaris?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard? Mr. Conti? Ms. Doesschate? Ms. Fahey? Ms. Farrell? Mr. Flynn? Mr. Hoey? Mr. Igo? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Kimbrough? Ms. Love? Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
It's 15 affirmative.
No abstention, no opposes. Resolution passes. Moving on, miscellaneous or unfinished business. Mr. Conti? Absolutely. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a motion? Okay, second? Meeting adjourned.